So as you can see from my experience, I am not a Gen Z. I'm not even a millennial. So for me, this is fascinating. I spoke to Larry the other day, and everything he had to say was just so interesting to me. So I'm super excited. And I mean, I kind of feel like you're the face of Gen Z. Can I say that?
I don't know. I feel like that's a pretty big standard bearer to take.
Okay, but yeah. So can you just kind of give us a little bit of a backstory on your schooling and all that?
Hey guys, so I'm Larry Milstein. I'm the co-founder of Prism. So what we do is we're a Gen Z consultancy, and our focus is on helping brands kind of bridge the gap from kind of their heritage and their sense of identity and translate that brand equity to this next gen audience through strategy, content, and experiences. So do you want me to give some background on kind of my path to this?
Yes.
So in college, I studied global affairs and actually lived abroad working in China, where I studied Mandarin and worked for Alibaba, which is like the Amazon of China. And I was part of this really interesting program where they brought in these 18 to 22-year-olds essentially as like a shadow consulting board to help them understand next-gen trends. And this was at a time when Gen Z was really a fringe topic. People weren't talking about it as a distinct entity from even millennials. But that experience taught me that when brands were really proactive in engaging the voice of next-gen audiences, those were the ones at the forefront of innovation. So I returned to the US. I spent 2 years working at American Express, also in a consulting strategy role. And that role evolved where I was, in many ways, as Pandora said, seen as that first, foray of Gen Z in the workforce and being called into conversations to essentially serve as a sounding board on kind of how millennials and Gen Z was different and how brands, especially in the luxury segment, could proactively engage this audience. And I can kind of go into how that led into Prism, but the long and short of it is there was a clear market opportunity and gap that wasn't being served. And it was exciting to kind of put together a team to help answer that.
So you basically were like, wait, I can do this for myself. I could start a business and do this for be a consultancy.
Well, in a lot of ways, what excited me most was the fact that I realized, even looking across other members of my generation, is that there was such an eagerness to be involved and to share our voice and to weigh in, but there was not really a platform or a conduit or that bridge to make that happen. And so especially as kind of this whole area is continuing to evolve and innovating in real time and so rapidly, being able to serve as that kind of apparatus, that prism, was the whole kind of guiding motivation.
Yeah, and can you kind of explain just exactly what Prism does and what you offer?
Exactly. So we really break up in our core services into 3 categories. On the most kind of traditional end of the spectrum, we're offering that executive education, brainstorming, workshops, strategic insight, the things that you would maybe hire, a Bain or McKinsey or a BCG in terms of the actual functional delivery. But in terms of the expertise and content area, you would be bringing us in to help actually guide that strategic thinking. And then in terms of the execution side, we do both experiential marketing, so community curation, bringing in, who are the rising Gen Z stars, emerging creatives, and so on, that can serve as ambassadors for the brand. We kind of shy away from using the word influencer because in so many ways, as the generation that was the first digitally native growing up with social media, everyone has a platform and a brand, and it's about finding that right match. And then finally, what's been really exciting and what we've seen a surge of interest in is actually advisory on the content side, especially with TikTok. So we have a number of exciting clients who are like, okay, we know we need to get into this space. We have no idea how to do it. Like we literally know that TikTok exists, but
that's me.
Yeah, we're like, and that's totally fair. And it's like, but we actually kind of need to bring in some outside expertise to make this happen. And so that's been a really cool kind of new part of our business.
Yeah. Is there anybody that works for you that is not Gen Z?
So yes, my co-founder, which is amazing.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, having that bridge of someone who is a seasoned executive. My co-founder launched one of the first direct-to-consumer fashion brands for Gen Zers. Being able to have that partnership of, I'm, still learning, but I have my pulse to the ground in the way that, seasoned marketing executives don't. But having that type of, advisory and, experience actually makes us quite differentiated from, other Gen Z experts out there that don't have that kind of background.
Yeah, that's definitely a dynamic duo for sure. Yeah. Is there a lot of pressure? Like, are you ever worried that you're going to come up with like the wrong statistics and the company's going to, not accept?
You know what? It's interesting. Yes and no. I think at the end of the day, there's this great quote from Einstein, I think, that's like, the most important thing about knowledge is not actually like the possession of it, but the pursuit of it. And so when we're working with, brands, the reality is any sort of generational insight, it's going to be an art and a science. And it's really about having that curiosity and humility to say, hey, we have all of these incredible attributes of our brand. How do we actually translate that in a way that can resonate with this audience? And data and statistics are important, but it's going to be also about, actually understanding if it works in real time.
Yeah. And what would you say are some of the main differences between Gen Z and everybody else?
Amazing. So I think just like to level set and to kind of give you the most foundational understanding of Gen Z, because we're all coming in with different levels of knowledge and education. So Gen Z is the cohort that was born 95 to like the mid to late aughts. Currently, we're already the largest generation by population size in the US. We control over 600 billion in direct or influence spend. So this isn't like a coming force, we're already here. What I think is most fascinating about Gen Z and the nuanced difference between, even late millennials is that as the generation that was the first to be entirely digitally native, the first generation that, was bookended between, Sandy Hook and Parkland, that are, contending with the ills of, climate intervention and climate crises. We're the generation that is most diverse, most multi-hyphenate, most fluid, most body positive. These are all things that are going to influence our consumer preferences and decision making. And so the playbook that was used to win over millennial consumers isn't necessarily going to resonate with an audience that has had a very different, scope of experience and, life exposures.
Yeah. And what would you say are their buying patterns?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I'm going to tailor this specifically to kind of the retail fashion kind of sector, because I think that's actually some of the most fascinating kind of behavioral patterns. At Prism, we're really seeing this interesting polarization in terms of shopping patterns on two fronts. The first one is you see this embrace of luxury and heritage brands, but in a way that's a little like iconoclastic. You kind of see almost the sense of, I really want that, Gucci bag, but I'm gonna pair it with this like really interesting thrifted item. And so we don't see kind of luxury brands being kind of obsolete, but we see them kind of transforming. And that's why you're seeing brands that are taking these bold collaborations as actually like quite successful and kind of, breaking through the noise and resonating with us. On the other end of the spectrum, as I mentioned, you see this like kind of sense, both for social, ethical, sustainability reasons, this embrace of the secondhand market. I don't know how many in this room are familiar with Depop, but this is a marketplace where Gen Zers are not just buying secondhand, but they're mining their closets to then actually get real revenue from setting up their friends in these photo shoots, putting it on their Depop platform, building an audience, and then selling out their products. So you kind of see that kind of polarization on both like thrifting secondhand, but then also those highly coveted cult-like brand obsessions. On the other hand of the spectrum, you're kind of seeing, Gen Z gravitate towards brands that are really unabashed and boldly taking a stance for issues that matter. Over 40% of Gen Zers are saying that they would, prefer to shop at a brand that has, an element of social consciousness involved. That's kind of very reflective outside of consumer behaviors in terms of the sense of passion around issues, whether it's climate intervention or whether it's gun control. This is a generation that's not afraid to say, hey, this is what I believe in and I'm gonna take action. The final thing I'll say is just also where they're shopping, which I think is fascinating. There's a study that says like 92% of all interactions with luxury brands for Gen Zers is actually happening through social media. So through Instagram and to a degree Facebook and now even TikTok. But I think this is a Bain study that came out that said still around 45% of all of those luxury purchases are still happening in store. And we're a generation that's had, dealt with a lot of anxiety, social pressures. In some ways that kind of retail therapy is coming back. It's a social and a real opportunity to look away from our phones and actually interact, face to face with items. And I think that that's also a powerful trend in force. So those two things I think are also working synergistically in terms of our shopping behaviors.
I'm so happy to hear that. Are you guys? Like shopping? Yes.
Shopping is like back because you know what? Because so much of our relationships are being mediated through an iPhone screen, those opportunities to actually break from it and to say, hey, I'm gonna be in the moment and be with a friend and actually, I've been saving up for this gorgeous, belt or whatever, and I'm gonna go into the store and get it gift wrapped and walk home with it. That still actually carries even more force for us. It's a novelty, it's an experience.
Amazing, yeah. So what would you say, why do you think it's crucial for companies to engage Gen Z?
I mean, it's crucial on the most cynical level because we are controlling more and more of the purse strings. We are already the largest population. We have hundreds of billions of dollars either influence because half of us, are still in school and are relying, on our parents or on other, guardians for that income, or starting off in the workforce. But I think the other thing, even beyond just actual discretionary spend and hard numbers, is our cultural impact. We're streaming videos hundreds of millions of times on TikTok and starting these viral trends. Things like OK Boomer don't just come out of, spontaneous combustion. We're the ones that are setting forward these conversations. And so brands that are trying to stay relevant and actually be part of the zeitgeist of what we care about are going to be the ones that proactively court us and understand us and don't just treat us as, oh, we're going to, kind of reach the next gen, but are actually like, hey, we're here to listen. And that's kind of what we're trying to do.
Yeah. What advice would you give to brands for 2020 strategy?
So on a philosophical level, I think brands that are transparent and ethical are definitely, it's not just a trend, it's something that I think is really built and ingrained into the fabric of how we're shopping. Brands that are, actually making really high quality items. We're thinking about the secondhand resale value of items. We're looking at all these other, whether StockX or Stadium Goods for sneakers, or whether it's, even to a degree of the Real for more luxury items. We're thinking about the actual quality of the items. And then finally, brands that are making that relationship feel really authentic is actually quite critical. And that's looking beyond just pushing out more digital advertising, but actually, bringing it into the IRL, the in real life.
So I see that we're running a little bit out of time. So actually, I want to let everybody know that Larry has a milestone birthday coming up.
Oh my God, stop.
Yes? Can we all say happy birthday?
No. Oh my God, please.
So can you tell us, what have you learned so far that has really had an impact on you?
I think the biggest thing is, and this is a piece of advice I got, which is, if you're hearing no, you're talking to the wrong person. And I think that especially as a young entrepreneur, it's quite scary to kind of be forging this new path. But every time I'm kind of facing that type of resistance, and whether it's, you can be in a big company and this also very clearly applies, continue to stay very motivated and don't take no for an answer.
No. Love it.
Thank you, Pandora.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Enjoy the rest of the day.